This is the only museum in North America of human rights.
The fourth floor of this building is of very huge significance. It's exactly why we're here.
When we highlight differences between groups of people to increase suspicion of them, to insult them, or to exclude them, we are going down a path known as othering.
I have so many people standing outside here and trying to get in. Then why are you guys protecting this?
Because it's reaching out there. Yeah. On the entrance.
Public health order states that it has to be open. Yeah. Visitors must be double vaccinated.
The special circumstances around being able to go to a movie or a Bomber game if you're double vaxxed are extra privileges.
And just like that, 2 weeks to slow the spread has turned into a forever war against those who aren't fully up to date on their QR code.
Not only did Syd cover the story of somebody else being discriminated against by the Human Rights Museum, Syd himself was discriminated against by the Human Rights Museum. But instead of that just being the end of the story, Syd also went looking for answers. And through answers, accountability. Syd asked 11 questions of the Human Rights Museum, and he got 11 answers. Many, in my opinion, were wholly unsatisfactory. In fact, many of the answers given to Syd amounted to excuses that some of the greatest human rights abusers of our time have used, that they were just following the law. Syd joins me now. Syd, what was the most shocking thing for you that came back in those answers from the Human Rights Museum?
Honestly, I think it was the totality of it. Like, I expected there might be some answers that were a little below par, but it was the whole email was just riddled with we're following orders, we're following orders. And the amount of answers I got, well, that depends on what you define an answer as being. So,
yeah, I mean, one of them was, well, we're just complying with the law, which is exactly what so many, and I hate to compare COVID to the Holocaust, but that is literally an example that was given by people who worked in concentration camps, that we were just following the law. And I suppose the whole point of human rights is that sometimes human rights abusers will pass laws that are legal, but they aren't just. And it is incumbent on people who are human rights activists, as they tell me they are at the Human Rights Museum, to object to these laws. But the Human Rights Museum has not objected once. They've never expressed dismay at what the Manitoba government is doing, and they are actively enforcing the system here. What was some of the feedback that you've heard from the public on your story? For me, it's one of the most emailed stories I got that week. Back to me, yep. People commenting on it. What was the feedback for you?
Just shock, mostly. Just people coming to the realization that, yeah, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights is the one that's in fact doing this. And they are just following orders. I asked them very specifically, like, did they independently seek a medical expert to find out if they had the best COVID policy that they could make? And they haven't done any research. All they were told was that the Manitoba government said you have to do this, and now they're doing it. No questions asked.
Now, for people who haven't seen your original video, when you went to the museum and they said you couldn't come in, when you tried to go in, did they ask you why you were unvaccinated? For example, this is a human rights museum where whole sections of it are dedicated to religious freedom and what happens when religious freedom isn't respected, or what happens to a whole entire religious and cultural group when they are treated as disease vectors. I guess my question is, they never really asked you why you were unvaccinated. It could be for a religious reason. It's none of my business. It's nobody else's. But they never even got that far with you, did they?
Yeah, no, not exactly. And it's kind of a shame. And even on their COVID-19 policy on their website, it doesn't list the fact that there are vaccine exemptions, even though it will tell you that there are mask exemptions. And I think it's funny because even still, they have yet to update their policy to show this. So they're being very reluctant in terms of the exceptions that are being made, because they're really just pushing the, what do you call it, the party narrative of our government ruling class.
Hey folks, that was an excerpt from my show, Rebel Roundup. Now, to get the full meal deal, why not go to Rebel News Plus, sign up, and never miss a Rebel News Plus show in the future.